Well, welcome everyone. My name is Misty Madero. Thank you for joining us today for our SBIR talks, How to Prepare a Fundable Commercialization Plan. I'm with UCR's Office of Technology Partnerships at UC Riverside, and I manage our SBIR Sttr Resource Center. Our SBIR talk series is organized through our UCR EPIC Small Business Development Center, SBDC, and our Resource Center. Our SBDC provides individualized support to early stage tech entrepreneurs and companies in Southern California to grow their business at no cost. Additionally, our Resource Center helps you with the following: locating funding agencies with a focus on your innovation, understanding the SBIR, STTR programs and requirements, connecting and communicating with the agency's program managers, connecting with university resources, reviewing and improving your proposal drafts, producing a viable commercialization plan, finding resources for your company, and building your team and key partnerships. If you're interested in learning more about the Resource Center or our EPIC SBDC, please email me for more information. And the webinar is also brought to you today in part and thanks to the SBA and our lead center, Orange County Inland Empire Network. So we have a full agenda today. So I'm going to introduce our speaker, Martin Kleckner. He is an EPIC SBDC EIR mentor. It's entrepreneur in residence, and our SBIR STTR expert with over 30 years experience in entrepreneurship, Martin Kleckner.
Thanks, Misty. Hey, everybody. I hope you can hear me well and are able to see the slides. I also wanted to add what Misty was indicating, that we're part of the Research and Economic Development, the Office of Technology Partnerships, and so forth. So our role in concert with SBIR, STTR, is working with you for all facets of technology commercialization, formation of partnerships, in addition to non-dilutive funding, equity funding, funding by way of foundations, venture philanthropy, and the list goes on as well. So our intention is to be with you, and typically the relationship may last many, many years, all the way through the completion of your AIM deliverables, an exit, and liquidity event. So you'll get to know us and we'll get to know you very, very well. So for mostly humanitarian reasons, I highly, highly encourage you to jump in. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. The first one is it's cruel and unusual punishment, quite frankly, if you have to sit here and listen to me yak away for the entire hour. But even more importantly, you have a wealth of experience, knowledge, that I think that we could all, including yours truly, benefit from. So don't be shy. Jump in if you feel that you would like to, ask questions, contribute in any way that you can. That, of course, will slow down the pace a little bit, but we set great store by what you have to say and what you have to share. So don't hesitate for a second. So anyway, commercialization is a very big deal, and it's not just to us or not just to the SBIR, but it was kind of like headline news for the Reauthorization Act of 2011. As you may or may not know, the SBIR programs are reauthorized every 5 or 6 years. And the Reauthorization Act of 2011 placed a great deal of emphasis on commercialization. And so the reason why, for those of you who have gone through the process before registering, you may be asking, well, gee, why do we have to register now with the SBA? And this is the reason why. We are interested to make certain that these SBIR grants, STTR grants that you receive, do actually end up in the hands of your target customer segments, the clinic, or wherever your objectives are. It also adds additional opportunities for funding and allows for, it did not previously allow for venture capital, hedge fund, private equity fund involvement as well. And we're going to chat a little bit toward the tail end, not a heck of a lot, but a little bit with regard to all of the commercialization assistance programs that they provide you as well. And for many of you who have participated, you'll know that these are the requisites. And I only include a few of the 11 or 12 agencies, if you break commerce into two of its segments, where not all agencies will be asking for much in the form of a commercialization plan in phase one, but it is very comprehensive and very rigorous and demanding for phase two. Yet the National Science Foundation, Energy, and others require a solid commercialization plan, not the more robust version in phase two, but the one in phase one. So very, very important. So I've gone through, Misty and I have probably gone through more SBIR and STTR applications than either one of us would care to confess to, but it's in the several hundreds now. And of the three areas that I think that we all may struggle the most, for those of us who are not trained scientists, engineers, and so forth, research design and management, it can be a huge challenge in terms of delineating that in your project description or narrative. Likewise, I would say that of all the teams that I work with, at least 65% we have to have a conversation about building and fortifying the team to make certain that we are at optimal credentials and qualifications. But today we're going to focus on the commercialization plan because that's a big bugaboo for a lot of us as well. And I hope you understand that your innovation, no matter how great, how thoughtful, how carefully designed it is, and how valuable that you, we, and others may think, it's not a field of dreams. It just doesn't work that way. So we are expected to be the seller to convince those who are considering funding us that this is something that is worthy of funding. So it isn't just the SBIR, by the way. It's our customers, it's strategic corporate partners and investors all the way through equity, venture capital, and so forth. You're probably familiar with Valley of Death conversations, crossing the chasm, and so forth. And my favorite one is can your dog hunt? So what I thought that I would do today initially is I had mentioned 100 and change, 200 SBIR, STTR proposals that I have very, very carefully read and worked with our EPIC SBDC clients over the various years. And this is also the areas of interest of the NIH, the National Science Foundation, in fact, all 12 of the federal agencies who are offering non-dilutive funding. These are the 7 key topics. And so what I thought that might be hopefully helpful to you is if we dedicated just a few moments each and went through each one of these sections to identify what I have discovered. And by the way, these have come from reviewers who have assessed commercialization plans in addition to the project descriptions or project narratives. These are the questions or critiques that they have offered in the past with regard to whether they're good, they're not so good, they're missing, or frankly, just simply could use some additional questions answered and so forth. So I highly recommend, and by the way, for those of you who work with me in terms of me very, very carefully going through the content of your proposal, this is what I am also looking for when I put my reviewer hat on. I ask these questions as I am reading your proposal, and I relay these questions to you if I don't deem that you're addressing or responding to these questions are enough that might will hopefully satisfy the reviewer's needs in order to give you a high score or a high ranking. So very important to cover all of these. Very important also, by the way, that you are specific with regard to commercial applications, of course, but the reviewers also want, if you look at item number 7, for example, very important that you demonstrate to the reviewers how your proposed SBIR project, the one that they are going to fund, how well it integrates with your overall commercialization or business plan. Very, very important that they need to understand that clearly. You've got to be very, very transparent about doing that. And by the way, you may note that with the NIH and the National Science Foundation, in fact, most of the agencies, they're not interested in just with regard to how valuable your particular project is to your target audience, but they want to know also what the public societal educational benefits are as well. So consider also non-commercial impacts. They're looking for that likewise. I had mentioned one of the three bugaboos, and one of them, of course, is the team. And as I've indicated before, a minimum of 65% of the time, we may have a conversation about how it might be best for your chances of winning an award if we maybe built the team just a little bit to add where we think or we may agree upon that there are certain experiences, certain skill sets, and so forth that may be important to fortify, to build on that team. And even though your phase one proposal is dedicated, by the way, to proof of concept and feasibility, very important to the reviewers that you already demonstrate that you have business expertise, commercialization skills, and so forth, with at least one member of the team who knows what is required in order to get to the so-called holy grail of your liquidity event or your exit strategy. And this includes those of you who may need to go through FDA or EPA or other regulatory matters, that you have expertise there as well. And by the way, I inserted here bio sketches. The importance of bio sketches, that your bio sketches in the core of the proposal is very, very important because it has to be expressly germane to the project that is proposing. But with regard to the uh, presentation of the credentials and qualifications of your team, especially with regard to your commercialization, market development expertise, that you demonstrate to the reviewers that you have the right skill sets and the capabilities and the experience to carry your your innovation once you demonstrate all of the deliverables that you need to accomplish have been accomplished, and that you are now ready to move into commercialization, place your product into whatever market that you need to. They are interested in size, they're interested in your experience and funding. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times, where investors will say it's the jockey. They want to know that you have experience and knowledge, or that you have access to same in order to um, accomplish all the funding needs that are required, and to align with corporate partners and get your product into the commercial market. Very, very important. The market and the customer and competition, these are the key questions that I've identified that reviewers have found missing in many cases. So many of these are probably no surprise to you. You, of course, need to tout the significant distinguishing advantages and characteristics of your innovation relative to the prevailing state of the art. It astounds me, if not just surprises me overall, that many of us are a little bit on the shy side when it comes to touting our skills. This is not the time, everybody, to be humble. This is the time to tout yourself and to let the reviewers know that the experience that you have, your capacity to commercialize your innovation is there, and that you can do the job, that you have the right stuff, that you've got the skill sets. This is not the time to be shy or humble. Okay. They love alliances, they love partnerships. in particular the National Science Foundation, and we won't have time to chat much about it this time, but they actually set great store by the formation of alliances and partnerships, corporate partnerships, for example, that are in the market and may deem you as a strategic fit. If you do have alliances and partnerships that may be able to carry you or accelerate your entrance into the commercial market, all the better, and it vastly increases your chances of getting an award. We typically do not do the best job in terms of marketing and sales strategy. It's very important. We may give numbers about our target market. We may even delineate who our target customer is. We may talk about who we're contemplating as our customers, our alliances, or our partnerships, but we typically may do a woeful job in terms of exactly how are we going to get from point A to B to C to D. You need to delineate your roadmap. And this is an area that I set great store by as I put my reviewer cap on. And for those of you who do work with me, we are going to spend a considerable amount of time on what your sales strategy is. We'll cover a few of the tactics a little bit later in an ensuing slide. Your current competition and your potential pipeline. Many of you say, well, there are no competitors right now who do exactly what you do. And that's perfectly okay. But your primary competitor, frankly, is what's going on right now, preceding your entrance or your attempted entrance into the market. And by the way, the competition doesn't necessarily need to be expressly related to the innovation that you're proposing, but they are a competition that has been embraced by your target audience. So you do need to consider all forms of competition, not just competition that appears to mirror what you are proposing to introduce into the ecosystem. And likewise is the case, do need to pay attention to what's in the pipeline. Check clinical trials, check patents that have been recently issued, check what's going on in other research entities throughout the country or worldwide, and so forth. They may come down and haunt you 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. You do need to identify, acknowledge them, and let the reviewers know that you are aware of what's coming down the pipeline. IP, very important. I know that many of you may be reluctant to share your IP. If you do not have a provisional application, albeit I highly encourage you to do so, you do then, of course, need to identify those areas of your proposal. Many of you already know this. Identify those areas of your proposal that you do not want them to share, with the exception of the internal team that is carefully reviewing your proposal. Many of you also may have an interest in trade secrets, copyrights, trademarks, and so forth. You need to identify all of those strategies of yours as well. And likewise, temporal barrier, that is to say, what initiatives you are going to be undertaking within your entire industry ecosystem in terms of controlling or managing as best to your ability how you're going to be able to stay on top competition as they respond to you or bring in new innovations into the market. Discuss all current patents that you have if you deem it's appropriate, those that are provisional, and patents that you are preparing to submit for consideration in the ensuing year or so as well during the timeline of your commercialization. And then your finance plan, really important to delineate, not just simply show a template, but delineate exactly how you're going to raise financing, from whom, the sources of your funds, how you're going to be deploying those funds, and so forth. Really important in your finance plan here and throughout the course of development of your commercialization plan, everybody, that the importance of letters of investor intent, the importance of customer corporate partnership support. By the way, these are not necessarily commitments to buy from you or work with you. It is letters that are stating that what you are doing is extremely important for what they are doing, and you may be a prospective strategic fit or partner or a customer, but it's not a commitment. But it is encouraging the reviewers to very seriously, if not outright, fund you in order to address the unanswered questions that you're working on in the SBIR, and also what specific steps and with whom and how you're going to be taking to secure your non-agency provided phase 3 funding, equity, venture philanthropy, foundations, friends and family, however you may be securing your financing. I think it's really important to provide them also. And I should also indicate, I haven't yet, that these reviewers are very, very busy individuals. So if we can provide them with graphics, with charts, and so forth, of which our text content will support. They value this a great deal. They're busy, they're tired. It's probably over the weekend. So if you can provide them with any graphics, it's really important. I wanted to call your attention, however, to this is a financial performa that I appreciate. And in particular, it in terms of expenses, most likely as a startup, the lion's share of your expenses is going to be sales, market development, and of course, administration, and also research and development. But I also wanted to call your attention down to cumulative net cash flow, or maybe deployable net cash may be a more appropriate term. And the reason being, this is a reflection to them that you are paying attention to not only your income statement, but to your cash flow statement and your balance sheet. Really important for them to understand that you've got a balance sheet that you are going to be accumulating with your capital or other funding into a cash account and elsewhere, because as you probably know, business plans are not sealed in stone. Things can go wrong. Sales may be delayed. Partnership agreements or delivery of product through manufacturing and production may not occur as we hope them to be. We do need to have cash in the bank. So I always encourage everyone to also account for whatever cash you will have available after deploying, for the important to have to seek out and generate capital that will build your balance sheet as much as it builds your business development as well. So not necessary these ensuing 2 slides, but I thought I'd share them with you anyway. The source is the National Institute for Drug Abuse, and you're very welcome if you are interested. NIDA is part of the National Institutes of Health, and they created a document called Writing a Good Commercialization Plan. Misty and I are very happy to share that with you. Just let us know if you're interested in seeing that document. It's a 5-page document, and it's for all intents and purposes, a pretty good one. But they also emphasize or underscore the value of graphics as well. So if you are interested in graphics, this tells a story of your various series rounds of financing and so forth. This is a pretty stark presentation of how you're going to be deploying your funds and from whom those funds are coming. But anyway, this may be a good start for you to present to them. And likewise is another one here that I've used in the past. And that is you're going to be using funds for research and development and so forth. And there is that God-forsaken valley of death that you have probably heard of before. So you need to let them know that you will be going through a time. They're expecting this, where you're not going to be generating revenue, or that is to say, cash flow, in order for us to remain viable. So you do need to generate capital from them and elsewhere in order to go through the so-called valley of death and get until you get to a point where you are starting to secure customers and getting to a point of break even and then moving forward from that. They do appreciate these types of slides. So now getting into production, sales, and marketing. And again, this is where partnerships and alliances do indeed come into play. And the product that you are offering, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean just the technology or the innovation. If you are offering customer support in terms of service, maintenance and repair, or anything else, let the reviewers know the complete package of the product that you're offering, not just simply the technology itself. If you're going to be forming channels of distribution, which many of you may, and I'd say at least half of my SBDC clients will do this, albeit even if we make a determination that you're going to be contracting for distribution channels and so forth, you may want to start out with the formation of what I deem uh, key strategic accounts, which means that before you sign a licensing agreement or a distribution agreement with a company, you may want to consider a couple of key strategic accounts that you will be and your colleagues will be generating. The purpose is to raise your enterprise value to a point where you're going to be able to structure a licensing agreement that is of economic value, benefits you. Otherwise, if you don't do these types of things, then the relationship that you strike with your licensee is probably not going to be as economically attractive as it should be if you do at least form a couple of strategic relationships where you have generated luminary sales and revenue. Those require letters of agreement, members of understanding, endorsement, and so forth. And likewise for channels of distribution. When you are applying for phase one, phase two grants, even if you have not formed an agreement yet formally, to get a letter of agreement or an MOU, endorsement, and so forth from both strategic accounts, customers, likewise strategic partners, are very, very important. And as I say, they don't necessarily need to be commitments. They can be letters that if we achieve all the milestones that we are planning to accomplish in our agreement, complete all our deliverables, then the chances of them forming a formidable agreement with us are very much increased and so forth. And likewise consider, which I've done in the past, media alerts, symposia. What I used to do, and I'm in the life sciences arena. So what I used to do was have a symposia where I would be giving an economic presentation of the innovation while a physician might be giving a presentation on the clinical value of the innovation as well. And those are very important as you get on a so-called road trip to make presentations to whoever your target audience may be. Luminary board of advisors, early adopters, evangelists, and so forth also are critically important as you're proceeding forward. They have a Rolodex, so to speak, or a long list of contacts that can be very, very valuable to you to develop your market. So your revenue stream can be
Martin,
multifold.
can I
Yeah.
interrupt you for a second? And you may have covered this already. Is the commercialization plan document that needs to be developed for a phase two only, or is it also needed for a phase one?
Phase one, depending upon who the agency is. So I had mentioned a couple of them, the National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy, for example. And there are a few others who are interested in a commercialization plan for phase one in
Got
addition.
that.
It may not be as robust as the ones that I had shared with you, but yes, phase one commercialization plans are very important as well. Now, for those of you who are submitting a proposal to the National Institutes of Health or a sub-entity of the National Institutes of Health, you may not need to do that. But there are other agencies, National Science Foundation in particular, Energy and others, that are asking for a commercialization plan for phase one. And thank you for asking that question. By the way, Misty or anybody else, if you want to jump in, don't hesitate for a second. So anyway, the revenue stream that they're asking for as well is both revenue model and your pricing tactic as well. They want to make certain that you have very, very carefully walked through all of this and made your determination on how exactly you're going to be doing that. And likewise, if you're going to be selling in lieu of, for example, direct sales to a manufacturer, if you're going to be forming joint ventures, if you're going to be striking a relationship with a reseller, have a letter from them, an MOU, letter of agreement, or letter of intent from them as part of your commercialization plan. So this was created by one of our colleagues, Ken Grise, and this is a very good representative example. And again, I mentioned they love charts, they love graphics. It is a great representative example of what your corporate development timeline may be. I've only indicated here, or Ken only indicated here 2021, but you can do it in a multi-year format as well. Very easy for viewers to read and understand, and then if they need further detail, they can go into the content, your text, to better understand exactly what your key milestones are. This is an older version that, for those of you who are from San Diego or have been working in San Diego, that the San Diego Connect organization has been using for at least a decade. And it's been useful, and it's not bad. So this is an additional version, or another version, where you can delineate what your key aims, your key milestones, and what your financial milestones are respectively as well. Again, supported with contact, text, and so forth. So having gone through all of those, as far as I am concerned, based upon my experience, of those 7 categories, of those subcategories, the questions or topics that are delineated are the ones that the reviewers are looking for. So I would highly encourage all of you to consider those 7 areas, those questions or topics within those areas. If you can address and respond to each one of those, the likelihood of you having your commercialization plan accepted is that much greater. Address those questions. Those are the questions that reviewers have provided to my clients and me over the past 10 years. And so it's evidence enough for me that those are the areas that they are keenly interested in. So I wanted to also offer another area that we set great store by. And if I were to ask each one of you where you develop your business plan, you probably are saying, well, yeah, in my office, in my cubicle, in my garage, in the library, or wherever the case may be. But the point that I'm really trying to get across here is that you probably are doing it in isolation or amongst just a few of you. But even more importantly, you probably did not consult with your target audience, which is key. So I don't know how many of you took philosophy as undergrads or elsewhere, but if you did, you're probably familiar with the works of Professor Michael Tyson, who's attributed with this particular comment. And it's kind of true that we may have a plan, but if we haven't tested it with our customer or with our adversary, we're probably going to get a punch in the mouth, figuratively speaking. And he's not the only one. Even back hundreds of years, Helmut von Moltke, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. If you're familiar with I-Core, if you're familiar with lean launchpad methods, and then you're probably also familiar with Steve Blank's comment that no business plan survives first contact with customers. And then likewise, many venture capital firms don't even read a plan. And I took this quote from the Foundry Group in Boulder, Brad and Jason, where they had indicated that they haven't read a business plan in over 20 years. So now you're asking me, well, what the heck, Kleckner, did you share with me all of these things with regard to a commercialization plan if no one reads it? Well, it depends upon how you prepare it and your sources of preparing it. And any of you, by the way, who have made a presentation, been on the podium, given a pitch, you know that you were probably presented with a template that you need to comply with. But when you peel the onion, and this is what I discovered, I've sat in more deal reviews than I can even recall. And when you peel the onion, it boils down to three essential questions that prospective investors want to learn from you right from the start. Despite every other slide that they asked you to prepare, there are three fundamental essential questions, and these are the ones. What is your business model? How did your business model come about? And what traction have you gained with that business model? And so to that end, and I had mentioned before the 211 SBIR Reauthorization Act, part of what came about of that Reauthorization Act was a program called I-Core, which the National Science Foundation started in 2012. I was trained nationally with the National Science Foundation I-Core in 2015. The NIH and the Department of Defense and other agencies are now adopting I-Core as well. And I wanted to share this with you as well, because the investors who are considering your innovation or considering funding your project are also now depending upon the business model that you generate through a lean launchpad customer discovery program. And so I wanted to let you know that UC Riverside is a National Science Foundation I-Core site. We train on a quarterly basis the lean launchpad method. Teams are encouraged to apply and be considered for participation. And certain awardees of SBIR grants also have an opportunity to go through this as well. But it is an ideal, terrific opportunity to actually get paid, by the way, to go through customer discovery and validation. And the national cohorts will pay you at least $50,000 or more to go through that program. Or for those of you who apply for NSF, you may have an opportunity to go through a mini version of that as part of your SBIR phase one. It's called boot camp. But it's a separate grant, 50,000 if you get accepted into a national cohort. It is a tremendous opportunity for you to conduct informational, high caliber interviews with over 100 stakeholders within your ecosystem, not just your customer, but everyone who is involved in some vital or critical role in your ecosystem. It is a tremendous way to understand your market, and wink and a nod, more likely than not, you will develop your corporate partnerships and your initial customers by way of going through that. So I can't underscore that enough. I'm a key disciple of it and always have been since 2015. UC Riverside also, by the way, selectively offers a proof of concept grant, and it goes up to $50,000. But I wanted to share with you just a little bit as well that if you, those of you might want to consider this, and I'll discuss it very, very briefly in the ensuing slides here, that if you are interested in participating in I-Corps, you have an opportunity to apply for it. It's coming up pretty quickly. Our lead instructor is Dr. Jay Gilberg, and I have his email address there with his permission. At least I think I have Jay's permission to reach out and
Yes, you have my
discuss with
permission.
Jay. Yeah, absolutely. And our next cohort begins on the 13th, which is less than a month away. 7 weeks, very rigorous, very intense, high caliber mentoring sessions with C-level, VP level officers who have been there and done that and understand this intimately. And it is an extremely valuable program and helps you set the stage for going through a national cohort and so forth. Very, very important. So for those of you who are interested, I highly encourage you to reach out to Dr. Gilberg and discuss the program with him. So anyway, an overview. This is an opportunity for you to get out of your office, to get out of your cubicle, to actually, by the way, not end up writing the plan yourself, your commercialization plan, but have your target audience and key stakeholders in your ecosystem write it for you. It's a tremendous opportunity by way of conducting experiments called informational interviews. The ultimate outcome is a high caliber, believable, what the investors are looking for, 9-component, 9-element business model. And I find I'm going to race through these very, very quickly. The federal agencies offer support for your commercialization as well, each one of them. The NIH has a relationship with Foresight, and I'll share that with you. You have an opportunity, if you are awarded a grant, to get a tech niche analysis, and the other agencies offer various programs as well relative to commercialization assistance. Foresight has a contract with the NIH to offer these opportunities for you. The LARTA Institute in Los Angeles supports awardees as well and offers commercialization training. Dawnbreaker is another one out of Colorado, and they also are the ones who administer road tours on SBIR and STTR. And the National Science Foundation also, by the way, in the interest of accelerating and fortifying your commercialization, actually offers additional supplemental funding grants. And however, this is for those of you who have made the seamless transition into phase 2 from phase 1. If you are deeming that you are getting to the point of completing your deliverables and you are in the process of receiving third-party non-federal funding, equity funding, the National Science Foundation will match that up to $500,000. There are 2 programs. They're generally similar for 250 and less, 500. So it is a tremendous opportunity as you are pursuing equity funding to let them know that once you get to a certain threshold, that the National Science Foundation will fund it up to $500,000. So I apologize for the full-on sprint. This doesn't really do justice with regard to commercialization requisites, but for those of you who are interested, you're more than welcome to reach out to Misty or yours truly. But seriously consider, and by the way, these slides are available for you if you're interested. But I encourage you to seriously consider, as you are compiling your commercialization plan, to look into the 7 categories that we had delineated today and the subtopics underneath them. And again, I am stating, based upon my experience, that if you are able to satisfactorily, sufficiently address each one of those subcategories within those 7 categories, your chances of having a fundable commercialization plan are probably pretty good. And if you need help in fortifying those, we're here to help you. So anyway, let me open it up. I think we've got about maybe 15 minutes, Misty, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And if you have any questions,
So there were a couple questions in the chat that I'll
yeah.
read. I do want to reiterate, I will email everybody the slides and then a link to the webinar once I post it on our website. So in the next day or so, you should get an email with both. And then let's see, let me try to make sure I get the questions. One question was, when recruiting the team, if we're in the early stages, do you normally offer equity, or is there something else to offer when you're in the early stages?
Sometimes it doesn't have to be equity, but when you're recruiting team members, you can offer equity, and many startups do. Some startups will offer a modest stake, dilutable, by the way, half a point or 1 point, as they serve on their board of advisors and so forth. And if you recruit a team as well, you may offer them founders capital. You may offer options or warrants as well. And we're happy to go over those in further detail if you wish. So yeah, you typically offer equity, not a heck of a lot. It actually depends upon the role that'll be performed, roles and responsibilities performed, of course. And we're very happy to work with you in terms of how you might want to consider structuring those relationships.
Thanks, Martin. Another question was, are SBIR grants open to foreigners and or students?
They are open to small business concerns, number one. Students, if you have formed a small business concern that you deem might be worth consideration for federal funding, the answer is go for it. With regard to foreign individuals, there is a way to be considered if you've got a green card, and also if you have established a status as a foreign resident alien. And there is a definition of a foreign resident alien in this case is approximately 183 hours. Let me take that back, 183 days, including 31 days in the current year. So that means that you have been participating and doing quality work within the United States over the past 3 years for a minimum of 183 days. Or if you have a green card, yes, you can qualify for submitting an SBIR proposal.
Thanks, Martin. And I think there was a follow-on, let me find it, to that question. Can you pay a foreign service provider for tooling or manufacturing or other services?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a heck of a lot. And the answer is yes, maybe. On the other hand, it may be a little bit more difficult if we are applying for funding or a contract, a grant, not a grant, but a contract by way of the Department of Defense or a sub-entity of the Department of Defense. But these are case-by-case situations where you and I, in concert, would have a conversation with the program officer or the program director and discuss what the situation is and either receive their clearance or not. But there are several projects that we're working on right now where they have been cleared. South Korea, for example. Prospectively, other companies within countries in, say, South America and so forth, that we have a long-standing, high-caliber relationship with. But again, it's case by case. We would want to have a deep dive conversation with the program officer.
So another question is, there a resource that explains SBIR STTR for beginners? And I can start. There is the sbr.gov site. There are lots of tutorials for every aspect of SBIR STTR. And we also have, we've recorded all of our sessions. So we have a part 1 and part 2 intro to SBIRs that you can watch on our YouTube channel. And I'll be sure to put the link in the chat box and send when I send out the recording for this.
And we also have a huge library of guides, by the way. And as I say, tongue in cheek, and I actually did that with an epic SBIR client this morning, where we figuratively backed a truck up and dumped about a dozen documents, including guides and so forth, on their driveway, so to speak. And it's a good start. And then it's an opportunity for you to go through those guides. We have tons of templates, and we have sample SBIR applications. We have documents which are actually intended for the reviewers, a reviewer guide. So we have loads and loads of information, documents in our library, that is to say the SBIR STTR Resource Center library, that we're very happy to share with you, and of course discuss every one of them with you personally. By the way, also, each of the agencies have their own respective guides. They're highly voluminous, but we're also very, very happy to go through those with you. And if you have any questions, and of course you probably will, we're very, very happy to address them with you. And oh, by the way, far be it that I would forget that the role of yours truly and other SBIR guides, and we haven't introduced them to you, but we should, will work with you, take you by the hand, so to speak, and we go with you step by step, all the way from registration to pressing the submit button. And that also includes very, very carefully and meticulously going through your content. And based upon our experience, whether we have domain expertise in your technology or have at least the experience in terms of logic and understanding of what the reviewers are looking for, we will go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until you're either fed up with us or that we're both feeling warm and fuzzy and comfortable enough that we can submit the proposal with some degree of confidence that you're going to be considered competitive and will receive consideration.
Thanks, Martin. Another question. Can you discuss how confidential proprietary information in the SBIR proposal and commercialization plan are handled?
Sure. You need to identify as part of your proposal and then highlight those components of your proposal that are confidential and not to be shared beyond the team that is a team of reviewers, that is to say, that are reviewing your proposal. And so we will show you how to do that. It's also in the guides in terms of how to delineate and identify those sections of your proposal that are proprietary and cannot be shared. Also, by the way, for those of you who do become awarded, your IP is not shared and protected for at least 7 years. We still, however, highly encourage you to, at least at a minimum, have a provisional patent application filed and underway.
Another question is there a way online or other to track SBIR grant allocations?
Not sure what that means, but if I understand your question, and correct me if I'm not, if it is how much funds, the ceiling that can be awarded, on a funding opportunity, it is indicated in the FOA, the funding opportunity announcement.
Okay.
That being noted, there are also waivers that may add an additional 50% to what is indicated in the guide. And sometimes, in particular with the NIH and the Department of Energy, funding awards can be negotiable in advance, such that if it's $150,000 or $256,000 or whatever the case may be, my experience with the National Institutes of Health, in particular NCI, National Cancer Institute, is that we may submit with the program officer's full knowledge in advance. This is the beauty of, by the way, building a relationship with the program officer early on, that you can submit a proposal which exceed what is the typical ceiling. So on several occasions with the NIH, we have been able to secure north of $300,000 for a phase one.
So a clarification to that question was, actually, can we find out who has received funds and by how much, and how funds have been dispersed?
There are opportunities to find that on the websites of the respective agencies.
And also, I'm going to put a link in the chat. There's on the SBIR site, they do list the awards for the different agencies, but it is generally behind a year or so.
But yeah, it's often they can be less than a year, 6 months for several of the agencies.
Yes.
And so typically what you will read there is an abstract of the project and the award and the amount of funding that was given for that award.
Yes. And another question, do you have any, Martin, do you have any insight to how long it is currently taking for NSF to review phase one applications?
Yeah, in eternity. No, that's a bad joke. They consider it, the entire time frame is anywhere from 6 to 9 months. Takes about, by the time that we submit our proposal for the reviewers and the study section to consider it, we may not receive it. Again, it depends upon the agency. Again, we may not receive an announcement of whether we were awarded or not until about 3 or 4 months have expired. Then there is a frame of time that occurs for them to ask any additional questions that they may need to ask. If necessary, conduct an audit, and then finally to be availed to receive wired funds. Not all of them at once, but wired funds within, I don't know, 7, 8, worst case 9 months.
Next question. If you found that previous federal funding was granted to a similar technology in terms of class, like the one we are developing,
Yep.
Would that help our argument with our SBIR phase one application?
Yeah, it can help your argument. Number one, you have already confirmed with the program officer that that is one of the agency's key areas of interest, number one. And there's evidence that they have funded another venture that is working in the same space as you. Importantly, however, they will fund you if you are demonstrating to them something that indicates your distinguishing characteristics, how innovative you are relative to the prevailing state of the art, and also what you understand was funded already. So as long as you can demonstrate your innovation and the value relative to that innovation, you are good to go.
So it's 12:30, but I have time for 2 more questions, and then any other questions I'll ask you to email me and we'll get back to you. The first one, or the first of the two, is, are agencies like the EPA still looking for SBIR applications?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Are you you may be referring to the political circumstances and so forth, or are you just simply talking about deadlines have already been reached? But
I'm not.
but the overview 30,000 foot level answer is that the Environmental Protection Agency is very definitely considering SBIRs. And oh, by the way, their budget is probably going to be increased in this next go around by Congress.
And in fact, I just looked on the EPA site and it looks like they're going to be opening a new solicitation in June. So perfect time to start preparing for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then last question, do you foresee in the future SBIR NIH submissions being similar to NSF, as to use the use of project pitch first and then full proposal, with the purpose to not waste submitting a not useful proposal?
Not yet. But regardless, whatever agency we are pursuing, I highly encourage what Missy and I call letters of intent or letters of inquiry. We also highly encourage preparing a single page statement of aims. And then, in the name of pollination, building relationships, we reach out to the program officer and arrange for a 30-minute conference call to discuss your statement of aims and your letter of intent. And that's very valuable, because then it in effect supplants or mirrors the project pitch, but they love it and encourage us to do that because it helps us know them better. It helps them to know us better. And on several occasions, frankly, if they take a keen enough interest in your venture, they may actually have a couple of reviewers involved at a very early stage to discuss with you your venture as well. That has happened on several occasions, where even pre-proposal submittance, if it's a topic that they are keenly interested in, turns out to be a very valuable conference call. So in lieu of the project pitch, and by the way, I should mention, the purpose of the project pitch was because the NSF was being incredibly flooded with a myriad of proposals, and though they felt that, well, why don't we do a project pitch where it'll give us an opportunity to invite those who we want and discourage those, not invite those that we don't want to receive. That being noted, that hasn't taken the burden off of them, because my experience is that anywhere from 80% and above they accept anyway. So that's I don't know if it was mission accomplished or not with them. But in lieu of the project pitch, anybody who works with yours truly or any of our other SBIR advisors, our first step will be develop an LOI in concert with a statement of aims, arrange a conference call with the program officer, and find out where we stand.
All right, thank you so much, Martin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. That's a wrap. We will be back the third Wednesday of the month, so April 21st, and we have a very exciting agenda. We're going to be have a panel of SBIR awardees who are also our SBDC clients, so I will be sending out that registration announcement soon, so please join us, and thanks again everyone for attending today. We'll see you soon.